Hello and welcome back to Dry Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is Sean Scott. Hey, Sean.
Hi, Whitney. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to hear your story. We were just talking that we don't really know much about each other. So this is going to
Yeah,
be totally new.
awesome. Well, I'm excited to share and appreciate the platform, the opportunity to do so.
So before we get started, why don't you just share a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to?
Sure. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. Born and raised here. I think like a lot of people went to like a big high school, went to a big college, went to Chicago for 6 years. Realized when I started thinking about getting married and having a family that, the suburbs didn't really do it for me. The cost of living in the city was difficult. And so my wife and I moved back to Indianapolis, where we're both from. We met when we were in seventh grade, 12 years old.
Wow.
She actually has the same name as me. Her name is Sean also. Uh,
Okay.
we met at a local library and formed a friendship, and then started dating, I don't know, sophomore year in high school, I guess, if you want to call that dating.
Mhm.
And then we went to two different schools. She went to law school up in Chicago, which is why I followed her up there. Now we are been married. It'll be 22 years in February.
Wow.
3 kids, 17, 14-year-old daughters, and an 11-year-old son. Two dogs. I see a tail wagging in the background there.
Yep.
Two cats. So it's a busy household. It's awesome. It's fun.
Loud but fun.
Yes, that's right. As far as professional, I've been in the supply chain, third-party logistics space all of my career. Had no idea what it was when I got out of school. Just knew that I wanted to go into sales. It was right after the C.H. Robinson acquisition of American Backhaulers, which was
Okay.
kind of like the big bang of that industry.
Mhm.
Went to work for, my two offers were either C.H. Robinson or a startup that was a spinoff after that acquisition. And I liked the idea of being a part of something where I think my hard work and effort would result in more of a significant impact on the organization. So been in sales in that industry for 25 years. The last 10 has really been just building sales teams and developing go-to-market strategies and
Right.
value propositions and just helping organizations scale.
Well, I feel like, to your point, nobody knows what that is until you find yourself in it.
Yeah,
Now we're here and we learn.
that's
That's
right.
exactly what happened to me. But
Yeah.
it's fun to meet somebody else that's also in the supply chain. I don't have the tenure just yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah. And so is your marketing, has your background always been in marketing, even in the supply chain space?
No, I started off as an account manager and then I transitioned into sales. So the AM role was a true onboarding role. And then there was opportunity to like cross sell and upsell as the relationship continued. It was a fuel card company. So, and then I went into sales. And then one day, as the CEO of a company that I worked for just was on my lunch break and said, how do you feel about marketing? And I said, that could align with my goals. I had no idea what he was asking of me. And he said, great, you start tomorrow. And I said, okay. that's how I started in marketing. So it's been a wild ride, but I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've met some really incredible people in the marketing space in the last several years. I think marketing and technology have become a more pivotal part of our industry for sure.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So part of this whole thing was because you have a story around sobriety, and I'm sure that also probably had a huge impact on your career. So I'm wondering, what happened? I would love to just dive in and unpack that.
So, I mean, I'll try to fast forward from the beginning. I mean, really, when I think back to alcohol, played a part in my life. It's been present always, right? I mean, I grew up in a house where you used alcohol to celebrate, you used it to commiserate, you used it to de-stress. So it was always like there, and it was always like a go-to. I still remember the taste of my grandfather's ice cubes that came out of his scotch on the rocks, Just little things like that. I actually live, ironically, down the street from the house where I had my very first beer ever
Okay.
as a second grader. And me and a buddy, we took two little half cans of Budweiser out of his dad's fridge, snuck out behind the bush in front of the house, and we both
Yep.
cracked them open. And
That's how it happens, isn't it?
he spit his out, and I was like, well, I'll take the rest of yours. And, it's like you look back and I'm like, man, there were red flags all over the place that I just couldn't see. And then it just played it was always there. It was the thing that I probably focused on more than anything, right? Like, and it wasn't necessarily like I needed it every day. I just needed to know that it was securely in my future to feel okay. So, like going through high school, playing sports, like during the season, I could go Monday through Thursday, not focusing on alcohol, practicing, working hard, as long as I knew that at the end of that week, I had somebody's older brother had secured us a case of Busch Light and, like something that I was going to be able to drink. So, and it just became more and more a part of my story the older I got. So, and I look back and like high school, like my grades were fine. I wasn't getting into real trouble, like I'd get it. And even when I did, like it was always, I always had a really good reason as to why it wasn't my fault. I became an expert at rationalization.
Right.
So through college, once there was no more supervision other than myself, I went to a big university here in Indiana, and it was, they were willing to accept my tuition checks as long as I was willing to pay them. And I was there for the social aspect far more than the education. And, I always had a job. Like I never looked at school like a job. I never missed a work shift, but I would miss, the first week of classes, I probably never went to a class. So it was one of those things where I would easily, I just thought that I'd be able to get by somehow because I kind of always had. So I did 5 years at school, still didn't have my degree. My girlfriend at the time, wife now, was getting ready to leave a small liberal arts school in Southern Indiana. She was very disciplined. She always knew what she wanted to do. She knew she wanted to be an attorney. So she went to law school in Chicago, and, she was very helpful in, the fact that she didn't even apply to the school that I went to says a lot about like how much she knew what was going to happen those next 4 or 5 years, right? She wanted no part of witnessing that. And then she was the one that told me, hey, like, even though you don't have your degree, like you need to change the scenery. Like you are focused on the wrong things. And I was bartending, of course, right? Because like, why not surround myself with the one thing that I couldn't control? And she was like, you're going to wake up and be 40 years old and be one of these bartenders here hitting on freshman girls, thinking that like you've got it made and you're going to be miserable. And she was right. So took a job, moved up to Chicago in the, third party logistics space. Did really, like I did well, like I was really successful at, in sales. I think starting at a young age, like my household, sometimes when the drinking was utilized for the wrong reasons, tempers would flare. I had one sister, it was just me, my sister, my mom, and my dad. I would be the one that was bearing the brunt of frustration after too much drinking, and so I became hyper focused on keeping everything copacetic, right? Like making sure everyone was happy at all times, because if they weren't, then they usually meant bad things for me. So that also, I had this developed this voice in my head that was constantly critiquing, what I was doing to make sure that I wasn't doing something that could be viewed as impolite, incorrect, not right. So that negative self-talk was always there. And one of the only things that would quiet it was alcohol, You're right. So, you had some like
And I
never.
bet you looked forward to that too, right?
Oh, 100%. Because it was my like, it's like the one thing, the thing about alcohol is that it's 100% effective, right? How much I would need to drink to get that 100% effectiveness changed over time. But as long as I had enough, it would always do the job, and turn me into a person that where I didn't hear that voice and I could kind of act just how I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up in a Catholic household, like I was told that God is like the God that you see in cartoons, like the flowing white hair and the robe and the staff, and that He was up there, like, and if you did what you're supposed to do, that's just, hey, nice job. But really, what He was there to do was to wait for you to screw up, and when He did, it was to
Oh,
unleash
it's a
His
hurt.
wrath on you. So when those things are happening to you as a kid, you're thinking, well, either there is no God, right? Or there is, and I'm just a bad person and He doesn't care about me, right? So
Right.
um, that's kind of how I went through life. And I told myself the story that anything I accomplished was accomplished because of me, right? Like I was the master of my domain, and the fact that I was able to, make it through school and have a job and be well compensated and have a wife, and these are all things that I was able, in spite of the tough upbringing and all those things. And alcohol is just part of my story. It was part of my identity, like it was. So after school, we moved back to Indianapolis. My wife was practicing law. I was kind of moving up the ranks in a local third-party logistics company that had just recently started. It was a division of a really large asset-based trucking company, and we went from 10 million to like 175 million in like 5 or 6 years, and it
Oh,
was
wow.
a really fun ride. And it's where I kind of moved up and got a lot of opportunities in a leadership position. First role as a director, then my first VP position. But alcohol was always there, right? Always. And I think it's probably around that time where slowly, I did end up finishing my degree after we had our first daughter. There was something inside me that was like, here's this little girl is going to look at her mom and say she's an attorney, she works so hard, and what's she going to say about me, that I got all the way close to the finish line and didn't finish. And so I went back and
Good
finished.
for you.
And then like right after that, the company I was working for came out with a scholarship that you could sign up for and write an essay and get interviewed. And so I was awarded a scholarship and went back to grad school. So I got my MBA in supply chain management from Kelly School of Business. So like and during that whole time, I treated education like a job. And so it was fun. I really enjoyed the learning, but I also saw that like when I was in those stressful situations, alcohol was my best friend, right?
Yeah.
Like I started focusing on work and then focusing on school and focusing on drinking. And what stopped being part of that equation was my family. And so I had less time for them. And I think like I started to view them at times almost like a burden,
Yeah.
like a hindrance, an obstacle keeping me from what I really wanted, which was to satisfy my addiction. And my wife was very patient. She was a good social drinker, but she like I think most people in their relationship to alcohol, when life got serious, she got serious,
Yeah.
and alcohol was no longer part of that equation. And I would ask myself, like, why can't I do that? Why can't I be a person that can control? Like I'll wake up in the morning and think that it's going to be different today or different next time I drink. And then,
It never is.
4 beers later, it's like I'm a bit, back to rationalizing why it's okay to come home at 2 a.m. and, my wife not know where I am. And, and it's really those things like all the rules I had set for myself. That foundation just slowly started to crumble under my feet.
Well, and no wonder like those things that we hold most precious feel like a burden when we're in our addiction, which I applaud you for saying that out loud because it's one of those like, it's a really ugly thought, but it's a really common and honest one.
Yeah.
You know, and I think some of it's because we feel like we have to hide so much of ourselves. Like it's not driving us to our end goal. And if we're being honest, our end goal wasn't the degree. It was the job that financed the degree, that financed the alcohol. You know, like we romanticized our lives around it. And one of the things that I didn't realize that was really, it was an indicator of sick thinking, is other people didn't think about alcohol as much as I did. Like I had thought processes beyond like, oh, I think I'm done for the night, or that actually sounds really good, I'll order that off the menu. And that's like the extent of a normal person's thought process. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm understanding what some broken thinking might actually look like. You know, and it took somebody that I really respected to kind of point that out of like, that's just not normal, Whitney. And I was like, I didn't realize, you know, but there was a part of me that knew that it wasn't quite normal because I was hiding it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think that was the voice that I wanted to drown out.
Yeah.
I knew I was an alcoholic long before I said it
Did
to
you?
myself. Oh, yeah.
What age did you start really considering that you might be an alcoholic, or how far into your drinking did that occur to you?
So I would say that I started drinking like regularly at 14, probably.
Wow, young.
And, you know, I don't know, probably in my late 30s, early 40s, you know, was like finally willing to be honest with myself that like I really loved alcohol, that I like just almost coveted it.
Yeah.
But I didn't, you know, it's like it would only be in those moments that I'd wake up and realize that I now have to apologize to this woman who I love so dearly,
Right.
because I said things that I have no idea why I said them, and had positions on topics that I had no reason why I had those positions on it. It was all just stemming from alcohol, right? And so now here I am having this moment of clarity where I realize that alcohol is causing me to do these things.
Yeah.
But then quickly transition back to, well, but I can't give it up, because like that is, you know, I had created this whole, it's like when I got sober, there was a part of me that's like, do I even know who I am? Like I've spent,
Yeah, for sure.
I've spent so much time cultivating this character who I wanted to present to the outside world. Meanwhile, there's this scared child that's in there that said, you know, outwardly I'm saying, you know, what you see is what you get. If you don't like me, too bad. I don't care. Like I was this tough Teflon exterior, and inside I was terrified that people wouldn't
Yeah.
like me, or that I would get discovered as a fraud, or, you know, that it was all going to come crashing down around me.
Yeah.
But
And I think a lot of us really don't know who we are, right? Like I think the honest answer to that question is like, there comes a point where you don't know who you're going to be when you put it down. And I think that that's really scary.
yeah,
You know, like it can be really fun. Like I try to remind myself, and whenever I'm in conversations with people that are newly sober, is like, it's as fun as you let it be, and to like be curious and ask yourself the questions and try new things, and, you know, explore and have fun with it. Like, yes, it's because it's going to suck. Like, sorry, my dog's in my lap. But discontinuing drinking is like, it's not fun. Like early sobriety just sucks. It does. Your body goes through withdrawals. You have to experience things for the first time sober. The world doesn't stop doing what it's doing. Other people don't stop doing what they're doing just because you made a change in your life.
right.
And I think there can be a lot of fear of, who am I? And if you were like me and that negative self-talk was like, if I can boil it down, like the moral of the story is that I'm a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to sit with that truth. And I now know that that wasn't the truth. You know, my addiction brought forth my worst qualities, and things that I would never dream of doing sober. But I truly believed that I was a bad person. And it's like, I just didn't get sober to stay miserable.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that, yeah, that is certainly for me, it was a necessity to find a way to be sober without just being physically sober, right?
Yeah.
Again, like you said, all the same issues exist in the world. Um, to not be able to handle those things and not have my 100% effective tool to always rely on,
Right.
it would be really difficult. So but yeah, so I mean, just kind of fast forward, my wife and I, when we were 40, a big group of us went out to Las Vegas. I didn't start going to Las Vegas, thank goodness, until I was in my, I think the first time I went was in like my late 30s. But I loved everything about it, right? It was like my
Yeah.
playground. It's where there was no one was going to tell me when I could drink, how much I could drink. It was like whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, including my wife was okay with it for whatever reason out there. And so it was a license to, it's like I heard it said, I drank more than I needed to 1,000 times, but I never drank all I wanted to, and like
Yeah.
when
That's
I was out there, I would try to drink every last drop of alcohol in Las Vegas every time. Um, and so the third time we made a kind of an annual pilgrimage of this trip, and the third time it just kind of spiraled. We spent all day at a cabana. We had been drinking vodka the last 2 days, so I was like, well, let's drink tequila. Like let's switch it up, right? Let's not be boring. And so we drink tequila the entire day. We're going out for my wife's birthday. She's a May 1st birthday, and went to a Carbone, a really nice Italian restaurant, really difficult reservation to get. I'm there with my two brother-in-laws, their wives, and my wife and I, and my brother-in-law and I get up to go to the bathroom, leave our phones because we're just going to go to the bathroom and come back. Uh, 5 hours and I don't know how many thousands of dollars later, we returned back to the table. No one was there, obviously. They didn't know where we were because we didn't have our phones on us. The next thing I know, I wake up, I'm on the floor of, thankfully, my hotel room, and the bathroom, like the water's running. Just in my boxers, I had like a huge bruise across my chest where I clearly had fallen and like hitting the counter. And I got up and I turned around, and my wife just kind of popped her head up, and she just, I don't know, it wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness, it was like resignation. It was like,
Mhm.
go ahead, I'm ready for your next iteration of BS on how you're going to control this. And in that moment, I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just said, I'm an alcoholic, I have a problem. And that was May the 2nd. Had a couple more beers when we got back to Indianapolis because a really good friend of mine, we were sitting around my fire pit. He had come in town from the East Coast, brought some really good East Coast IPAs, which is my favorite. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to quit drinking. And he said, I think I have a problem as well. And I said, well, let's do it, man. Like, I'm done. And so on May 8th of 2021 was my first day of sobriety. And so, um, I luckily had some people placed in my life, one being my wife, who was, incredibly patient, never really like put the ultimatum down, but was getting
Yep.
there. Like
Sure.
the last thing I remember her saying was, if this is the lifestyle you want to lead, I'm not saying that's not okay. I just need to understand that so I can make decisions accordingly regarding
Right.
our, and we had, at this point, we had 3 kids, um, who were all, like, my youngest was 7 at this point. On quite a bit, and I think it was, oh, you have 2 dogs. I see 2 tails.
I have 2 dogs.
Yeah, awesome. So, it was, I understood what she was saying, which is she was very driven professionally and was going to protect her kids. And if that meant she needed to get them away from me in order to do that, then that's what she was going to have to
Yeah.
do. And she never said it. I just understood it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So and then another person was who now is my sponsor. There was a guy who I had known for years, and our daughters were the same age. Our oldest kids were the same age. They went to school together. You know, you hang out with your kids' friends' parents. We had gotten really close, and I knew he didn't drink. And he was like the most chill, laid back, like guy listening to like Bob Marley and like Fish, Grateful Dead, and just like seemed to not have a care in the world. And I was like, this is, you talk about crazy thinking. Like, I just assumed 100% assumed that he just got high all the time. Right. I was like, there's no way he's just sober. No one is this happy.
And just enjoying their life that much.
Yeah, like Diet Coke and cigarettes like cannot produce this kind of happiness and like, you know, laid back approach to the world. And so I remember one time we were at his like their cabin, and I was like, hey, you know, do you want to get high? And he's like, I don't, man, I'm either drinking and drugging or I'm not. He was like, that's just not a part of my story. And so I was amazed, right? And I remember thinking back to that moment when I was like, all right, I'm done, that he was someone that I needed to reach out to. And so I did, and we went to breakfast, and he knew exactly what we were, you know, going to be talking about.
Yeah.
And
They always do.
right, yeah. And he agreed to sponsor me. And then the other one was my brother-in-law. My wife has 4 brothers, so 2 that are 5 years younger than her, and then she has one that's like 16 years younger, and then another that's like almost 20 years younger. So the one that's like 16 years younger, he had been battling a heroin addiction, and he had gone in through Salvation Army. Like, it got so bad that I thought the next time I saw him was going to be at his funeral. You know, I mean, it was terrible. And I saw just like how bad this drug could ravage a human being, but it wasn't alcohol. So like, it didn't really hit home. But what did hit home is when he came and did his 9th step amends in my driveway. And I'll never forget, like, so amazed by the amount of courage that I saw on display from him. And I was like, I've never been this courageous in my entire life, you know, ever.
Yeah.
And through like, I was just overwhelmed with emotion because I just saw something different in him. And it was like truly a miracle. And so I remember I had that kind of memory to hold on to. So, yeah, so that was kind of when things kicked off for me. And I think that's when I took that first step of admitting that I had no control over this, you know. And it's been a really amazing journey the last 4.5 years to really understand what that means and how that plays into my life, and just makes me a much better human being in all aspects, you know.
And it just gets better and better. You know, like, doesn't necessarily mean that life gets better and better, but like the quality of it and our ability to handle what's coming our way. That is something that I feel like is so unexpected, because I feel like in year 1, you're just surviving. You're just figuring out how to exist in the world. And then I feel like year 2, you're really just implementing all the things that you learned in year 1. And then all of a sudden, like, and things can be amazing then too, but then all of a sudden you're like, I really like, this is gonna work, you know? And that to me is like one of my favorite parts. My favorite year, one of my favorite years was year 3. And that's the coin that I always keep with me. It's because that's when life started to have like color again in a way that was like actually beyond anything that I could have imagined for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally allowed myself to feel free.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just the initial weight of saying I'm an alcoholic out loud, the amount of freedom, the amount of power that it took away from that statement, you know, because that had been swirling in my head as like a category 5 hurricane for years. And as soon as I said it out loud, it lost so much of its power. You know, and I think that's really, you know, I had 2, like, I had one, I guess really just one, I don't don't know, close call with a relapse. And it was, I was interviewing, I was looking for another job. When I started the interview process, I was still drinking. So, you couldn't talk to me for 10 minutes without me telling you how much I liked beer, specifically like really hoppy IPAs. Like I would give you like my whole, resume on why I'm such a beer expert. And I went to a job interview in Mississippi, kind of middle of nowhere. I'd met with this company, great people, really enjoyed them. I was actually staying at the owner's guest house on his property down there. So I
Okay.
went down and spent the day in the office, hung around with just, like I said, some really quality individuals. And he was like, hey, we're going to go back. We're going to, have got someone cooking a great meal for us. We're just going to hang out. My family's going to be there. We can talk. And I was like, wow, this is like for him to embrace me this way meant a lot.
Right.
And then, he said like, oh, we'll be drinking beers on the back porch. And, I was like, oh no, like, how am I going to navigate this?
Yep.
And again, like the idea of saying I don't drink was like inconceivable to me.
I know. You're like, everybody's going to know.
They're going to know, right? Like, absolutely. They're absolutely going to know. And then the stigma of being an alcoholic is going to be out there. So
Yeah.
I had convinced myself on this half-hour drive from the office to his property that I was just going to drink and I'd be okay with it. And I'd get up and I'd start the next day. And I'd rationalized all this. And so I get it to the guest house. He's showing me around. He opens the fridge. He's like, hey, I got, stocked it for you. There was like it was like like the light shining on like these glistening cold
Yep.
beers.
Exactly what you're talking about.
And
Beautiful. You're like, wow, look at that.
I was like, oh my gosh. So I closed the door and he's like, we'll be waiting for you to get changed into something comfortable. And I did as quickly as I could. And I got the hell out of that house. And I was walking down this driveway to the main house. And there they are just kind of sitting around. It's a beautiful day. They're out like looking over the lake on his property, drinking beer. I walk inside and their CFO is like, hey, do you want a beer? And I said, I had already told myself, I said, yes. And as he's reaching for it, the owner, who was sitting behind me on a couch, icing his knee because he had just had knee surgery, out of nowhere just says, hey, Sean, there's no pressure. Like, if you don't want to drink, don't drink. And I don't know if there was a hesitation in my voice. I don't know how he would have known, but he said that. And I feel like in that moment, I felt like I was at sea and the ship was getting ready to pass me. There was no land in sight. And this guy threw the last, life jacket or whatever over the side. And I grabbed onto it with two hands. And I was like, I'm not going to let go.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, actually, I'll do a soda water with lime. And that's really like the last close call. I mean, this was like less than 60 days into my sobriety.
Mm-hmm. And some of it's second nature too, to say yes. Like I think we're so used to wrestling with ourselves that we're like comfortable being that uncomfortable with who we really are.
Yeah.
Because I was in very early months and was at this all-inclusive resort for this like sales thing that I was a part of. And somebody walked by, with the trays and brought it out to our table. And I just reached out for one and just instinctively was like, oh, nope. That's right back. But there was a moment where it was like, I knew that this was going to be here. I knew I was at an all-inclusive resort and I was going to have to say no. I knew that I needed to find alternatives. And, I think that's why it says like, all bets are off. Our only defense is to the first one.
Yep.
And that is so true. If I know and follow my instincts of just reaching out for that first one, I'm not going to stop after that.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't. That's not a skill that I possess.
No, me either.
And there is no thought in my mind at this point that I could ever go back and drink, right? Like I now understand, did not at the time, what it meant by you have to smash this idea that you could ever drink normally again. you know? And so I'm very thankful because I think that was in May um, of 2021. And that was like late May. So I don't even think I was 30 days sober because then in June, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And in less than a month after that, he passed, and
It's a big thing to do sober.
yeah. And I mean, like, I really think that, I don't know. I don't know, my belief is that there is a higher power out there. And I have been fortunate enough to have the understanding and the support to be able to cultivate, you know, my higher power as I understand it, not as the God that I was told existed, when I was a kid growing up, that just couldn't wait to, unleash his wrath on me. That this God had been here for me my entire life. And uh, it was not coincidence that I got sober when I did,
Right.
because that would have been a license to drink as much as I wanted to, and no one would have been able to tell me different. And meanwhile, my mom, it would have made things so much harder on my mom.
Yep.
She's about to lose her husband of, in August would have been their 50th wedding anniversary,
Wow,
and
man.
so she's losing this person that, for all his, shortcomings when I was growing up, and the fact that we didn't really have a great father-son relationship always, he turned out to be a wonderful man, and the greatest grandfather that I have ever known, and a really, really good friend of mine and of my wife's, so um, it was hard, but I was able to be there for my mom, and I was able to be, someone, and I'm still able to be there for her today because of that. Right. And then it was 6 months after that, my wife gets diagnosed with inflammatory breast cancer, which is like a really rare form of breast cancer that's only like 1% of all cases.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like, if you've not heard of it, it presents as like a skin rash, so you don't even know you have it until a lot of times until it's too late, and it's in your skin. It's not just like a lump. So anyway, like, that was chemo, radiation, 11 surgeries. Like,
Jeez.
my kids are terrified that they just lost their grandfather, who they were all really close to, and now the mortality of their mom is called into question. And I would not have been able to survive that,
Yeah. Oh, I'm so thankful that the gifts that we get back in recovery, as well as the ones that we get on top of it that we never had. Like, it's truly such, I think that, like, every person that's sober is such a miracle, and everything that you're saying just backs that up, right? Like,
Yeah.
what a blessing that you were able to be there for your family. And that those, from the timeline that I'm hearing, some of your dad's final memories of you were sober.
Yeah. I remember I got to tell him. I remember sitting my parents down. This is before I even knew that he was sick. And I said, I'm an alcoholic. And the first thing he said was, based on whose definition? Right. Like, I think it immediately, what I've realized in my experience is, when you tell someone you don't drink, or you tell someone they're an alcoholic, for whatever reason, it like seems to hold up a mirror, right, to them, and like their own relationship with alcohol. Because I can't count, if I had $10 for every time someone, after I said that, felt the need to explain to me their relationship with alcohol,
Yep.
or like how they don't drink that much anymore. They get, it's like, I don't. And the thing is, like, I don't care. And I don't mean that like I don't care. Like, if someone has a problem with it, like, I certainly want to be there, but I don't care how much other people drink.
Yeah. My relationship with alcohol, like, no offense, is not about you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what happened to my dad. I think he immediately was like, saw, it caused something in him to be like, well, wait a minute, is this my fault? Right? Did I
Mhm.
do this? Is this coming from my,
Right.
my genetics or whatnot? And then a couple days later, he called me and was like, I'm really proud of you, And so
Wow.
it was like, I wish I would have been able to do my, kind of an official amends to him. I did with my mom, but I did get a chance in one of his last like coherent days. He was in the hospital and they were saying like he still has 6 to 9 months, and they were talking about in-home hospice care. And there was something in me that was like, this is not going that way. Like
Yeah.
this is going. He went into the hospital to get a port put in to start chemo, and never got out. Right.
Yeah.
So I saw things deteriorating. And so I asked my mom and sister if I could have the room. And I had, a good 10-15 minute conversation that allowed me to let him know that I harbored no resentment or ill will towards him. And I loved him. And I loved him for fighting his way back into our family when he could have just turned tail and run. And
Yeah.
he didn't. He showed me the amount of courage and strength it takes to admit when you're wrong, and what you do and how to own it. And so that's something that I've been able to carry with me. And,
It's
I
also
realized that
something
like
that you've shown your kids that you know how to do.
100%. Yeah.
And they're always going to remember that.
That's been the relationship I have with my children and my wife. It is just, it's incredible right now. Right. Like my daughters and they're, 17 and 14, very formative years where like like how their social life, right, and social cues and the things that are out there that are impacting them, like alcohol and like sex and drugs, and those are all coming. And I know what I was doing at 17, right? Like, so to be an example of that, you don't need alcohol to be there for any of that, right? And not only does it not make things worse, it makes things better.
Yeah.
Is really a tremendous. My daughter was recently got like a National Honor Society, and she had to write like
Oh,
an essay, and I didn't even know until after we saw it. One of the questions was like, "Who's your hero?" And she put me down. And it was like such a validation for the miracle that this program, right? It's like
yeah.
sponsoring somebody and being able to see. It's like I didn't know how much my parents loved me till I had a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Like you just can't understand the depth of that love. It's like I also didn't understand what a miracle my sobriety was until I got to see it happen in another person who I
Yeah.
was close to. And it's amazing. This individual and I could not be more different, from completely different parts of the world. We never would have had any reason, even if we had passed each other,
Yeah.
uh, to notice each other. But there's that one commonality that we both understand, and it has allowed me to really, just to be there and assist him through his journey. And I love him like a brother, I mean, he is one of the closest people in my life, and that's like just over a year. We've been able to form that relationship. So um, I'm just in a much better place. Like I just have much more clarity, so things don't impact me. Like, I just lost my job back at the beginning of September for the first time ever. I started working at 14 slanging frozen yogurt at the mall in Indianapolis, and I've never been fired. And it was just for strategic differences in regards to nothing I had done wrong. But I think back, though, the 4 years I spent at that company, like when I just gotten sober, started that job, it wasn't with the company where the guy told me I didn't have to drink. I kind of wish that, I've tried to get in touch with him to let him know what an impact he's had on my life, but I have not been able. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I sent an email. That was the best I could do. I don't know if he ever got it. I hope he did. I hope he knows what an impact he had. Something so simple. But anyway, so I was working for this company. They didn't know that I didn't drink. And again, the guy that hired me, we had worked together before. He knew exactly how much I drank. So he like prepared them for like, this guy likes to party and he likes. And so I was telling them like, I don't drink, and it's a weight loss thing, or I'm just proving to myself I don't have to. Like I still wasn't comfortable saying,
I'm in recovery.
yeah, I'm in recovery. But that when my dad passed, when my wife got cancer, this company could not have been more understanding. It was like it was a husband and wife ownership team who really values family. And they gave me all the space and support that I needed. And a larger organization, it may not have been that way, right?
Yeah.
So I look at where I am now, looking for a job for the first time ever, um, without having one, and I'm in a very comfortable place because I think I was allowed the space to really grow into my sobriety, to really handle the things I needed to in my personal life. My kids both had one of my daughters was had really bad depressions, experimenting with self-harm, like suicidal ideation. One was going through like eating disorder stuff. Like
Yep.
and the thing that helped me was saying, look, there's nothing more powerful than being in a group of individuals that truly shares in what
Yep.
you're going through. When you hear somebody else describe your problem in your words, but
It's
your
amazing.
voice, it is like the most powerful thing. And
It turns the light switch on that you didn't know you needed. And I think it creates this safety of like, I can hear all day that I'm not alone. But to
yes,
watch somebody else and it kind of like makes your heart just like stop for a second, and you start questioning your own reality. But then it soothes something inside of you that had always wanted to be seen, but was really afraid to show it.
mm-hmm.
And
That's
I think
a great way to put it.
nothing more powerful than that.
Yeah. So, like I'm just so grateful. Like gratitude is like the first thing, when I thought about like after I lost my job, it was like kind of abrupt. I wasn't prepared. I had no idea. Like I said, we had been very successful within the company. It was just my vision for growth and theirs was different.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like out of the blue. But I thought, I spent like the first 24 hours, like just really thinking about my time there. And the one word I kept coming back to was gratitude,
Yeah.
and like to be in a place where I'm grateful for the experience I had as opposed to resentful at what had happened and not to be able to look forward. I mean,
That's healing.
it is. Yeah, it is. And it allows me to be in a good place, like my wife runs a law firm and I'm here at her law firm right now because the business side of running a law firm is very different than practicing law. And so I'm like, well, hey, I got a ton of experience in like the business side. So I would love to come help you. And so, like I'm not worried that things won't work out.
Yeah.
It's like, if I just do the next right thing, if I stay true to myself and my sobriety, and my family and the things that are important, like I'm going to be okay.
If somebody resonates with your story or is looking to have somebody in their corner to learn from, I would love, as we're kind of like winding down the episode, because we're a little over time, but that's great.
Wow. I just saw the time in the upper left-hand corner.
This podcast has no rules. But if somebody does maybe want to reach out to you and this has really resonated with them, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, to reach out?
I have no problem. I give my cell phone. I mean, every time
You wouldn't be the first.
yeah. My email, like I would say whatever is the most comfortable for that individual to reach out, because it is terrifying. It is scary to think that when you're in that place, there's something wrong. You're telling yourself that it's that the light at the end of the tunnel is daylight. I told myself that for years, and luckily I realized it was a freight train and got out of the way like right before it hit me.
Yeah.
My cell phone. I mean, you want me to just say it?
Yeah, I would love. I mean, if you want to put it on the podcast, but I would love, for anybody that's listening that maybe if this just resonates with them and they want to connect with you, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I would love any opportunity to just listen to somebody that has not had anyone to listen to them in regards to these topics, because I didn't for a long time, and it definitely kept the problem perpetuating in my life. So my phone number is area code 317-809-9100. My email is S like Sean, E like Edward, D like David, and then SCOTT @gmail. I am, I believe that there are a number of ways that you can deal with addiction. I only have found one that has worked for me, but I think throughout all of it there has to be people that you can talk to that understand what you're going through.
Right.
And that if I can be that for somebody, I would be more than happy to do that.
Well, Sean, this has been a fantastic episode. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. It was so relatable and it was so powerful. I'm really glad that we connected online.
Likewise, thank you very much for the time. It was great to finally meet you.
Yes. And to everybody else, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right.